right, well, thank you for those of you who are joining us tonight. It's such a beautiful night. I'm so glad that you've made the time to join us. I hope that you find this information helpful. So thank you for joining the Deerfield Public Library for starting a small business in Illinois with Mitch. Now, how do you say your last name, Mitch? I'm going to butcher it.
That's
I know
all right.
it.
That's all right. It's got a lot of vowels in it. Don't worry about it. It's Bienvenu.
Bienvenu, got
Yes.
it, of the Illinois Small Business Development and International Trade Center. We hope that you find this program helpful and informative, and that you'll find the resources provided. We'll send a follow-up email, but that you'll find those valuable as well during these challenging times. And a couple of tips. I'm sure you've done this before, but there is a chat box at the bottom of the screen. You are welcome to use that at any time during the presentation, and Mitch will answer your questions near the end of the program. And also, if you could just let us know how many people are joining you on your device, that'll give us a more accurate count of attendance. All right. So if there aren't any questions at the moment, I'm going to turn it over to Mitch.
All right. Excellent. Thank you very much, Jamie. And good evening, everybody. I guess it technically is evening. It's a little after 6.
We're there, yeah.
So settle in with your beverage or your food, whatever you have in front of you, and relax and enjoy that while we talk about how to start a small business in Illinois. As Jamie said, my name is Mitch Bienvenu. I am the director of the Small Business Development and International Trade Center at the College of Lake County. And I have been in this job for about 2 3/4 years now as the director. And for 17 years before that, I started and ran 2 different companies. One was a consulting firm where I did corporate training and development and human performance improvement consulting. And the other was a company called Citizen University, where we wrote educational curriculum and sold it to youth mentoring organizations like Big Brothers Big Sisters and some other smaller, lesser known youth mentoring organizations. So I did that for a number of years, and it was a lot of fun, and I made a living at it. And now I'm in this job where I get to help people like you who are either already in a small business and trying to figure out what they can do to make it work well, or are just for the first time considering starting a small business. And either one of those is fine. This program that we're going to spend time on today is an introductory program where we're going to look at some of the high-level things that you need to know and do in order to start a business in Illinois. And I consider it to be an introductory program because, as I'll talk about more in just a bit, our Small Business Development Center has a lot of other resources that you can use to help you when you are actually ready to start your business. We have advising, one-on-one business advising, a lot of other training programs that go into depth on certain topics like marketing and business finances and things like that. And then we also have some tools that we can offer you that will assist you as you start your business. So I'm going to share my screen and pull up the PowerPoint presentation that I have here. So hopefully everybody can see that. Let me know if you can't, Jamie. If I don't hear from you, I'll assume everything's okay.
It looks good.
All right, excellent. So one of the things I want to comment on before I forget about it, something that Jamie and I were just talking about, is that for the past 6 months or more now, small businesses have been very focused on just surviving. Certainly there are those businesses who have done just fine through coronavirus, but many, if not most, have had a really tough time, especially those businesses that are retail oriented or restaurant oriented or arts and entertainment, sports, any of those kinds of businesses where you have to bring customers to a physical location in order to, enjoy the product or service that you're selling, have been really challenged. And we have spent months and months mostly trying to make sure that those businesses have access to important resources like funding, because their revenue has been down so much that the federal and state and local governments have instituted different programs that are providing loans and grants. And so we've spent a lot of time making sure that those businesses have access to that kind of stuff. And before we're done today, I'll show you our website, and you can go there. And what you'll see when you get there is that there are lots and lots of different coronavirus related resources, different funding programs, other external organizations like the Small Business Administration, which you see the logo on my slide here, that are there to support businesses during this time. And it's too many to mention. So if you're interested, I'd just like to urge you to go to our website and check it out. If that's something you're thinking about, if you're already an established business and you want to know what kinds of resources are out there, feel free to do that. So here's what we're going to focus on today. 4 key objectives. The first one is we're going to review factors for small business success. Now, there are, in reality, many factors. I'm going to talk about 6. And I'm going to talk about these because they, in my opinion, in my experience, they tend to be some of the most important ones. And what I'd like all of you to do is begin thinking about where you are at in relation to those 6 factors. In other words, what have you done or are you thinking about doing to get good at these 6 factors, because they are directly related to success in a small business. So we'll take a look at that. We're also going to take a close look at some of the requirements for starting a business in the state of Illinois, and in particular in Lake County. There are things that you need to know to be, a legitimate business. There are things such as forming a legal entity and figuring out which kind of legal entity is the best for you. Thinking about how it is you're going to report and pay your taxes, and things like liability insurance to protect yourself, and a number of other issues as well. So we'll take a look at those things. We'll also, number 3, start talking about your target market and your marketing strategy. One of the very important things about being a business owner is that you have to recognize that whatever product or service it is that you have to offer, it's important that you don't just assume that people will be compelled to buy from you. Sometimes I make a reference to an old movie called The Field of Dreams with Kevin Costner, in which he has this vision where he is told to build a baseball diamond in the middle of a cornfield in Iowa. And in the vision, he kind of, in his mind, he's saying, well, it doesn't really make sense to build a baseball diamond in the middle of a cornfield in Iowa. And in the vision, he's told, if you build it, they will come. And that's great for Hollywood and for movies, but for small business people, that tends not to be the case. And so you really do want to have a marketing strategy and know who it is you want to buy from you. You need to know who your customer is, because you're going to spend quite a lot of your time trying to appeal to those folks. And that's a good thing. And there's both an art and a science to it. And we can help you. The Small Business Development Center can help you learn how to be a good marketer. And then the last thing we're going to talk about is the funding. Usually it takes money to make money. It takes money to start a business, and you have to figure out first how much money you're going to need to get that business off the ground and to operate it for, say, the first year. And then you have to decide where that money is going to come from. And so we're going to look at some different sources for that funding. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we do at the Small Business Development Center. Small Business Development and International Trade Center. Sometimes it's such a long title, I neglect to bring out the international trade part, but I will talk more about that. So at the bottom of the screen, it says economic development through entrepreneurship. And one of the things I distinctly remember being kind of a sobering statistic when I first started looking into this some years ago is that from a percentage standpoint, more than 99% of the businesses in the United States are categorized as small business, okay? More than 99%, which is shocking. When you think about Lake County here, where we have large businesses like Abbott and Baxter, and now AbbVie and Shire and Walgreens and other large businesses, we've got many of them. So they're there, but when you think about driving down Washington Street through Waukegan, or Center Street through Grays Lake, or down Route 45 through Mundelein, whatever, Milwaukee Avenue in Libertyville, what do you see to the left and the right? You see small businesses, restaurants, and tire shops, and donut shops, and coffee houses, and barber shops. So 99%, a little bit more than 99%, are small businesses. Now, the Small Business Administration defines a small business as 500 employees or less, which to me is a pretty big business, right? That's a pretty big business. So 99+% of the businesses in the United States have 500 employees or less. However, and this is a pretty big caveat, about 97% of that figure have 10 employees or less. So most of the businesses in the United States have 10 employees or less. And so small businesses are the economic engine that drives our economy, which is, I'm going to now go back to the statement at the bottom of the screen, economic development through entrepreneurship. At the Small Business Development and International Trade Center, we work with people who want to start and operate successful small businesses because we know it is the economic engine that drives our economy. And we exist to make them successful so our economy is successful, so that people want to live and work and play in Lake County, right? Have it be a place where you can do all three of those things. So that's what we do. And then how we do it is at the top of the screen. We inspire, we educate, and we connect. We're excited to be working with people just like you who are interested in starting a small business. It gets us motivated because it's what we do, and we just love being around people who have that entrepreneurial perspective. So, we do programs like this in which we try and get people excited about the idea of starting a small business. So we inspire, we educate. One of the things you'll see, and I'll talk a little bit more about in just a bit, is that we have many other training programs. This is an overview program, and it's meant to be kind of a summary of things. And you can come to our center, and now it's all done virtually, of course, but in a normal operating environment, we'll do face-to-face training as well, that you can dive into topics like marketing and business finance and bookkeeping and all kinds of stuff like that. So we do a lot of educating. And then third, we connect. So for example, we get a lot of businesses who are wondering, if they can get a commercial loan. We don't offer loans, but we're pretty connected to the lending community in Lake County. We're connected to the chambers. We're connected to the economic development entities within the villages in Lake County. And so we try as best we can to get our small businesses connected up with the right resources. So that's basically what we do. And now we're looking at a slide from the Bureau of Labor Statistics that gives us some interesting information about operating a small business. When I first saw this slide, this information, I should say, some years ago, it was kind of shocking to me. Basically, what it's telling us is that for all the businesses that start in the United States, by the end of the first year, 20% of them won't be there anymore. 20% will be gone, so 2 out of 10. By the end of year 2, 35% will be gone. By the year 5, half of them will be gone, and by year 10, only 3 out of 10 will remain, so 70% will be gone. And I put this out there when I do this workshop because I do want people to know that there are challenges to starting and running a successful small business. And we're gonna talk about a lot of those things today. we know quite a lot about what it takes to be successful. And that's what I want to focus on for the rest of our time. What does it take to be successful? Know that there are challenges, and know that there are a lot of resources out there to help you, one of which is the Small Business Development and International Trade Center. So I think what I'm going to do is I'll try and pause every now and then just to see if there are questions. I don't want to race through this whole thing and save the questions to the end. So I'll pause a couple of times and see if there are questions. And if there aren't, that's fine. We can absolutely wait till the end to take them. But let me go through one more bit of information and then we'll pause real quickly. So these 6 factors for success that I mentioned a little bit earlier, as I said, there are challenges to starting and growing a business. Thankfully, we know some things about what it means to be successful and what it takes. And here are 6 things, okay? The first one is planning. Now, why do I say that? I say that because if you are going to start a small business, you are getting ready to spend your own money, probably, in all likelihood, at least some of your own money, a lot of your own time, and your talent, blood, sweat, and tears to this endeavor, and you want to make sure that it turns out right. For a lot of people, they start a small business not because it's fun, but because they need to make money, right? And because of those things, because you're getting ready to spend your own money and your own time and your own blood, sweat, and tears, you want to make sure it's successful. Planning is one way of doing that. Now, I know that may sound like a no-brainer, but I can tell you from personal experience, and now that I do have this job and I work with people all the time who start businesses kind of on a whim. Like they'll say things like, well, I'm really good at making jewelry, therefore I'm going to start a jewelry making business. Or I'm a great cook and I want to start a restaurant. That's a good foundation to start from, but you really need to take a look at whether or not you can sell your product or service. You need to make sure there's a need for it, okay? And so completing a business plan is part of that. So I'm going to move past that right now because we are going to talk a little bit more about that before we're done today when we get into one of the later sections. But before I move on, I just want to mention one thing, and that's that, and I love using this quote from Mike Tyson. Mike Tyson, former heavyweight champion of the world, one time, you don't think of him as a philosopher, do you? But one time he said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And that's so true for small business people too. You put together this plan that outlines what you intend to sell and who you want to sell it to and how much you're going to charge, how you're going to deliver that product or service, et cetera, et cetera. And then life happens. And, something shocking like coronavirus, for example, perfect example of this. Life happens and suddenly your plan is not real anymore and you have to pivot and you have to make it work anyway. So that's very true. Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth, and getting punched in the mouth might be something like coronavirus. How do you, as a small business, pivot and, keep your doors open and keep making revenue when something like that happens? So we'll talk a little bit more about planning in a bit. Customer needs is the second one. And this is kind of connected to what I said earlier about not just assuming that the people that you want to sell to have a need for what you're offering. You have to check that out by doing some market research. And we have some market research tools. I mentioned earlier that we provide training, advising, and tools. We have some market research tools that can help you to figure out what the industry that you want to go into is like, what the profit potential is, what the competitive environment is like. And so, long story short, there are ways that you can confirm that there is a need out there for what you have to sell. And you need to spend time on that. The third one is differentiation. You are likely not going to be the only company selling the product or service that you have in mind. You'll have competitors. And you have to think about how it is you're going to be different. Because I'll give you a perfect example. This very workshop that I'm talking with you about today, I offer at the College of Lake County to people who are getting ready to graduate in programs like how to be a home inspector or how to sell real estate, how to do start your own heating, ventilation, air conditioning business, and those kinds of things. And so when I'm in one of these workshops, or these classes rather, I'll be in front of 8, 10, 12 people who are getting ready to graduate, say with a certificate in home inspection, and they're all getting ready to graduate at the same time, and they're all going to go to work in Lake County as home inspectors. And so they all have the same set of skills, and they're all going to do the same kind of thing. How is it that you are going to compel customers to go to you versus the other 9 people that are sitting around, in this classroom with you? And so you've got to think about things like competing on price or quality or customer service. There has to be some value that you're adding that that compels customers to go to you versus the competition. And so there's another area that you can dive into and learn about. So let me make this comment right now, and I'll say this several other times before we're done today. As a small business owner, you need to know quite a lot. It is one of the most challenging and fulfilling things you'll ever do, in my opinion, starting and running a small business, because you have to learn so much. And that's what I want to emphasize right now, is the learning component. If you're going to be a small business owner, just decide right now that you're going to be a student, that you're going to learn about how to meet customer needs, how to differentiate yourself, how to do good planning, how to do good marketing, how to manage the capital and cash flow in your business. These are all things that you can either learn yourself or bring somebody in to help you with. And that's another key point. You need to know that all these things have to be done, but you don't have to do them all yourself. You can hire an accountant. You could hire somebody to do the social media marketing. Okay? So you should be a student always, and know that there are people and organizations out there that you can hire to help you with some of these things. And I urge you to do that. I urge you to surround yourself with people who can help, because frankly, especially as your business begins to grow, you may not have the time to focus, to do everything yourself. All right. So surround yourself with people who can help. So number 3 was differentiation. Number 4 is marketing and sales. And I've made mention of that a couple of times already. A really important part of your business. Just to kind of, put a blunt statement out there about that. If you can't find a way to compel people to buy your product or your service, then you don't get paid. And if you don't get paid, you don't get to eat. That's what I say to folks. Now, that may not literally be true in some cases. However, it is. If you are relying upon your income from the small business to pay the bills, the mortgage, the groceries, etc., obviously, if you're not marketing and selling properly, you don't get to eat. So I say that a little tongue in cheek, but it's not completely untrue. Marketing and sales is a whole area that you can spend a lot of time learning on. And I would suggest that you kind of get in that frame of mind now. Know about how to communicate to the people that you want to sell to in a way that has them attracted to you and your company, and that has them realize that you have something of value to offer at a price they're willing to pay, and that you make it easy to buy, and all those things. And you'll find, if you go to the Small Business Development Center website, you'll see we offer a lot of marketing and sales related courses. So the 5th one is capital and cash flow. It takes money to start your business. You have to know where that money is going to come from. You have to have a regular inflow of money, which usually shows up in the terms in the form of revenue. You're selling your product or service, and customers are paying you, and you're using that money to pay your bills and grow your business, etc. And so cash flow is really how the money in your organization goes in and out, how money comes into your organization and goes out of your organization. And without getting into too much detail here, what you don't want is a mismatch between the time that you earn revenue and the time that you have to pay your bills. We have some businesses that are seasonal in nature. like landscaping businesses, for example. They may have bills to pay all year long, but their peak season is in the summer and perhaps in the fall. And in the winter, unless they're doing something like snow plowing, they're not making a lot of money, but they still have bills to pay. So you have to think about how the money moves in and out of your organization. And I can tell you that cash flow problems can put businesses out of business. So there's something where, you know, you can rely upon some of our small business development center advisors to help you out with that. We've got some guys who, and ladies too, who know a lot about the financial ends of business, and they can help you with that. And then the last one is management. And so what I'm talking about here is that really, I guess you could use the word leadership of the organization as well. The people at the top, it's usually, you know, you folks who are thinking about starting this business, and anybody else you might have partnering with you, that those people at the top of the organization making the decisions need to have a well-rounded perspective. It's great to start a business because, as I said earlier, you're good at making jewelry or you're good at cooking, and that's foundational and very important. And you need to know how to get all these other things done. A lot of times people start businesses because they're technically competent at something, and then they run into the need to do the bookkeeping or the marketing, and they're not quite prepared to do it. And so management needs to be well-rounded. And what that essentially means is you need to know what has to be done, but you don't have to do it all yourself. You can rely upon others for help. So I'm being a little redundant now. I've said that a couple of times already, and I'm going to say it again before we're done, because it is important. Don't try and be an island. You don't have to go this alone. There are other people and organizations to help you. So those are our factors for success. Now I'm going to stop my screen share for just a second, and we'll take a look at the chat box. And all right, so there's no questions in the chat box. If somebody wants to put a question in there, or Jamie, I don't know if we have if they can speak to us, if that's an option, that's fine too. But let's just
yeah. If somebody wants to be able to speak, just mention that in the chat and I'll give you permission to speak. Otherwise you can put your questions either in the Q&A or in the chat.
Yep, good. So take just a few seconds to see if there are any questions, and if not, that's fine. I'll move forward. And Jamie, if while I'm presenting, if questions come up, you can feel free to stop me if you want.
Sure thing, sounds good.
So I don't see any in there now, so we'll continue. All right. So what I want to do now is just provide a little bit of, I got to get my slides working here. There we go. I want to let you know a little bit more about the Small Business Development and International Trade Center and what we do here. So we work with for-profit businesses. Our grant prevents us from working with not-for-profits at this point. And not that we won't talk with you, obviously we will, but we can't spend a lot of our resources on you because just the stipulations of our grant prevent us from doing that. So for-profit businesses, up to 500 employees, as I said earlier, that's the definition of a small business. And most of the people that we work with are 1 and 2 or 5 employee businesses. I'd say like 90% of the people we work with, or the businesses we work with, are really small, 1 and 2 person businesses. And we work a lot with people who are just starting up, so know that. We also have a fair amount of well-established businesses that we work with. And one of the ways we work with them is by helping them to export a product or a service. So you see domestic and international enterprises on the slide. We have many companies who export a product or a service, and it's usually a product, frankly, to an overseas market. And some of these companies get 50, 60, 70% of their revenue from overseas. And that was another really interesting thing to learn about, that most of the buying power in the world is outside the United States, and there are enormous opportunities in overseas markets. We also, it does not reflected on the slide here, but we can also help people get into government contracting as well. So how we help, I'm going to just buzz through this one really quickly because I've already made reference to this. We do one-on-one business advising. We offer a lot of training programs, and we have tools and resources like market research tools and other things that we offer our clients. These are just some of the businesses that we've helped over the years. Some of them, like Fire Guys Tinting, the one in the lower left there, he came to us at a time when he was already quite successful, and he needed a small business loan in order to buy another facility. And we were able to connect him up with a lender who extended him the loan, and he grew his business, and everything is still, he's in business in Antioch and doing quite well as far as I know. And then the one in the lower right is an export client of ours who won a state award for Exporter of the Year. And the guy you see on the right with his arm up there, that's Kevin Kim. He's our international trade specialist, and he's really good at everything export. And then the other two businesses on the top are just smaller endeavors that we help to get started and get going. And we've got many, 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 many more stories like that. And I'd be happy to talk with you about those if you want. We're grant funded. So we get money from the Small Business Administration at the federal level, Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity at the state level, and then the College of Lake County hosts us, meaning we operate out of there, and they also contribute a fair amount of money. And so with all those three sources combined, that makes up our operating budget, and there are no cost to our advising services, and a fair amount of our training is no cost either, or I should say as well. And some of our training programs, I would say, are low cost. So no cost and low cost training. So wherever you are at in your journey as a small business person is fine. That's really what I want to get across at this particular moment. Some of you have a business idea and you're trying to work out, maybe you're in the beginning stages of creating a business plan and trying to figure out where the money's going to come from. That's wonderful. Some of you are just interested in knowing what it might be like to run your own business, and what the lifestyle is like and what it would require of you from a skills perspective. That's wonderful as well. And either one of those is fine with us, and we'd love to talk with you. So I don't know if I've mentioned this before. I think perhaps I haven't, that when you go to our website, one of the first things you'll see is a big red button that says schedule an advising session. And it's real easy. Just click the button, and then you get to read about all our different advisors, and you get to pick your advisor and pick your day and your time, and you'll schedule an advising session where you can talk about your business idea. Or if you already have an idea, you can talk about how to advance that idea, create a business plan, talk about funding and all that kind of stuff. So that's what I would urge you to do. As I've said, this is an overview workshop. I want to absolutely point you to all the other resources that we have, which mostly starts with our advising. That's a really good place to start. I like for folks to think about why you're doing this. Why start your own business? Because it matters, right? If you are starting a business just to make money and it doesn't mean anything to you, or it doesn't really mean anything to the people you're trying to sell to, then you probably won't make a lot of money and you're not going to create a lot of meaning. But if you start a business because it means something to you, you have a passion for it, and you think that you're solving a problem or you're providing a service or a product that's needed and that gets you excited about providing that, that's a good thing to start with, is meaning, right? So if you start a business to add meaning to your life and to other people's lives, then you're likely to not only create meaning, but make money. So one, they kind of go hand in hand, but if you're only after money, most of the times it doesn't work. You have to have some personal passion and connection to what you're doing. So a lot of times they'll take a passion or a hobby and they'll turn it into a business, right? And that's wonderful. And a lot of people made that work and are having a good time making money at something they enjoy. Another thing I always tell people is be careful, because sometimes you take what was a hobby that you were just doing in your free time and enjoying it, and then you turn it into a business, and suddenly all these requirements are on you to make money, and to produce all kinds of product, and it becomes burdensome and you don't enjoy it you don't enjoy it so much anymore. So that possibility is there, but that absolutely can be managed. A lot of people say they want the lifestyle, they want to be their own boss, and you absolutely will. And, that's one of the things that I think is both a significant fulfilling factor, but also a real challenge, because a lot of times people will say, well, I want to maintain my own schedule and put in my own time when I want to. And you will, but I can almost guarantee you that as a small business owner, especially as a startup, you're going to be putting in more hours than you ever did when you worked for an employer, because it does take quite a lot of time and commitment to be successful. So yes, you'll be your own boss, and hopefully you'll be a good boss. But you're going to put in some time, and many people do it willingly because it's a labor of love. And then the last one there says get rich. And the nice thing about the idea of starting your own business is that there's really no artificial ceiling to the amount of money you can make. When you work for an employer, you have a pay scale and you get a paycheck, and maybe you get 3% increase every year, but that's about it. So it's kind of limited. And with your own business, it's really up to you as to how much you make. There certainly are a lot of challenges to being successful, but I know plenty of people who are what I would call rich, right? They're making a lot of money. Most people that I know in small business are not what I would call financially rich, but they have a good lifestyle, and they make a good living. And, if you're fortunate enough to put some money into savings or a 401k or retirement account, that's good. Also, richness can be measured, I think, by the quality of your life, not just the amount of money you're making. So if you're in a job that you love, that's part of what it means to be wealthy. So there are a number of perspectives on why you want to start your own business, and there's not one right one. I just encourage you to think about the reason you're going into it, and if it's something that you care about and have a passion for, and you want to add value to people's lives, and be your own boss. Those are wonderful reasons. If you're only in it for the money and nothing else really matters, my experience with that has been in the long term, it might not work out very well. But that's just my opinion. So we're going to make a little bit of a shift here now. Got to wet my whistle. And what you're seeing is a checklist for starting a business in Illinois. Jamie should have sent to all of you a booklet called the Starting Your Business in Illinois Handbook. And I would encourage you to read it from cover to cover, really. It's like 40 pages long, but it's full of resources for you. That's what I want you to get out of it. Look through there, find out what resources might be beneficial to you, and explore that. On the bottom left-hand side, bottom left-hand portion of this slide, you see a page number, page 28. And that's the page number where the topics you see listed on the slide are provided in much more detail in the handbook, okay? So you can read the detail of what's in the handbook on your own. I'm going to overview these now, and we're going to talk about this because these are some of the things that you need to know and do to get your business off the ground. The first one's write a business plan. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in just a bit. So hold off on that one. We're going to skip over that and we're going to move to number 2, which is choose a business structure. So choosing a business structure, or maybe another way of saying it is forming a legal entity, is an important step. It will tell you, it does 2 things for you. Number 1, it protects you from a liability perspective. And number 2, it helps you to understand how you're going to report and pay your taxes. And so let's pick that apart a little bit. The liability issue is important. If you're selling a product or a service to a customer who doesn't like it, or gets hurt, or gets sick, unfortunately, they can sue you. And if they sue you and you have not formed a legal entity, then that means they can go after your personal assets. You don't want that, okay? You don't want them to be able to take your savings account and, you know, require you to liquidate your home in order to pay off litigation. So one thing I'll say right off the bat here is form a legal entity. Sole proprietor is technically a legal entity, but it offers almost no liability protection. And I always urge folks to think about an LLC or a subchapter S corporation. In the back of the handbook, I think perhaps it might even be on one of the pages following page 28, there's a comparison of all the different kinds of legal entities that are out there, and there's a bunch of them. And it lists kind of like the features and benefits of each one. So you can look through that and get a sense of what might be best for you. I can tell you LLCs and subchapter S corporations are very popular, and they tend to cover a lot of what businesses need. I also urge people to consult an attorney on what would be the best form of legal entity for you. Also take a look around at, you know, if you have friends or you know people who are in business, ask them what form of business they have, and that might provide some insight as well. But you absolutely want to select the right one, and then, you know, fill out all the paperwork and get your legal entity squared away. One other thing I want to comment on about this that's not on the slide here is that you should have separate business and personal banking accounts. Don't commingle those funds. Every time you make revenue or you pay an expense, it should go into and out of your business checking account. You want to keep those funds separate. It protects you from a liability perspective. So for example, if, you know, you were to get sued, doesn't mean having a legal structure, a legal entity doesn't mean you can't get sued. It just means they can't go after your personal assets. So separate those out. Have a business checking account and a personal checking account. And start, you know, if you're curious about how to do that, just start with your personal banker. A lot of those personal banks also offer commercial banking. So you can start checking that out there. So the third bullet says register ownership. Basically what that means is once you've discovered what kind of legal entity you want to be, you have to fill out the paperwork and you'll submit it. It's really, it's pretty, in my opinion, pretty easy to do on your own. You can go to Jesse White, which is the Secretary of State. They've got a website that's dedicated to helping you start your business and fill out your articles of incorporation and all that stuff. So once you've done that paperwork, what you get in return, once you've registered your business, is what typically is called articles of incorporation, which is just the state's way of saying they legally recognize you as a business that can operate in the state of Illinois or whatever state you choose to incorporate in. And of course, it also means that the IRS now knows that you're operating and, you know, you need to pay your taxes. So that's registering the ownership. And the fourth bullet down there says protect products, services, and ideas. So what I'd like you to think about there is, do you have a need for a patent or a trademark or a copyright? Generally speaking, a patent is something you would put on a product that you have that you want to protect the design of, because if you don't protect the design of it, somebody else can steal it and you have no legal grounds to resist that. If you've written something that you don't want stolen, you can copyright it. If you have a logo or a slogan, you can trademark it. So there we're talking about intellectual property, really. And there are different ways that you can protect that through patents, trademarks, and copyrights. So just be thinking about that. And once again, you know, if you want to chat more about that with any of our advisors, we can certainly have that discussion with you. You want to think about tax requirements. So you're going to have to pay taxes. And here's another area where, so if you're good at the bookkeeping and accounting and doing your own taxes, that's wonderful. Go forth and do it. I always had an accountant, and I relied upon that person to help me, first of all, figure out how much I should be paying in taxes. So my accountant used to say, you know, and obviously we would talk about my business and how I was doing, and whether or not I wanted to break even at the end of the year, or, keep my money for a little longer and pay in at the end of the year, that kind of thing. So based upon all those variables, your accountant should be able to help you by identifying a percentage. Like my accountant would say, withhold 26% for the Fed, another 5 or 6% for the state, and then basically the way it usually works is once every 3 months, once every quarter, I write a check to the Fed for 26% of my revenue and another one to the state for 5% of my revenue. And then at the end of the year, I work with my accountant and tax preparer to settle up. And, you know, sometimes you might end up owing a little bit more, or you break even, or you actually get money back. So rely upon your accountant and a tax preparer to help you out with that stuff if you don't feel you can do it yourself. Those are great partners. Oh, and by the way, a good accountant is also going to help you identify all of the tax write-offs, deductions that you can get as a business owner. And there are probably some you don't even know about. So another good reason to work with an accountant. You're going to want to know if you're going to employ people, you're going to have to know what it means to be an employer. And you're going to have to pay payroll taxes if they're employees. And you're going to have to think about things like workers' compensation and OSHA requirements, Occupational Safety and Health Act requirements, etc. So there are other things, and the handbook explains some of these in more detail, but there are other things that you have to consider if you're going to have actual employees. Securing permits and licenses. So let's say you're going to start a donut shop in Mundelein. So the village and the health department is probably going to want to check out your donut making kitchen and make sure that it's sanitary and, you know, meets all the criteria that they have. So there'll be permits for that. Okay, so I think I was talking about permits and licenses when I dropped, and so I'll just repeat the last bit about what I said there, which is go to your village hall and ask for the person whose job it is to help small businesses get established, and they should be able to fill you in on the unique requirements in that particular municipality. Also, something I didn't mention with regard to your accountant is if you're going to be selling something that requires a sales tax, they can help you to figure out, you know, how to charge that tax and pay it back, you know, pay it to the state. So purchase insurance is something else that I want to talk about. And it's very connected to this issue of choosing a business structure. And here's why it's connected. As I said, having a legal entity protects you in the sense that if you are to get sued, they can't go after your personal assets. But it doesn't mean you can't get sued. You can still get sued. And what having liability insurance does is it helps to pay off the bills of any litigation, or if you get embroiled in some kind of a lawsuit. And so I always had an insurance policy. If you're going to be, when I had my own businesses, if you're going to be selling a product or a service that, certainly if you're going to be selling a product that could harm somebody or could make somebody sick, any food related thing, or, you know, device where people get physically harmed, for sure, I think you need liability insurance. And even if you're providing a service, which is what I did for the 17 years that I was self-employed, and I had clients who would not allow me to set foot on site unless I could demonstrate I had liability insurance. So it's something to consider. Now, one of the things that people think about when you're starting a business is, you know, the dollar signs start going off. Okay, I have to get an accountant, you know, I have to pay to create a business structure. I have to buy liability insurance. I have to pay for permits and licenses, and you start racking up all this money. And it's true. I mean, it costs you money to make money, but you want to protect yourself. You want to be smart. A lawsuit can end your business. And you just want to make sure that you're protecting yourself to the extent that you can. And I don't get any kickbacks from accountants or insurance agents or anything like this. I'm just telling you what I did and what a lot of small business people do. So I'd urge you to seriously think about protecting yourself in those ways. one of the things that we can provide you, if you just email me, and you'll see my email, you'll see an email at the end of this presentation, is a referral list. And the referral list has accountants and marketing professionals and commercial real estate and business insurance and all kinds of other things that I just can't remember right now. Referrals to Lake County based providers for those kinds of business resources. So feel free to email us and we'll send that to you. And then the last one is marketing and selling. And I've mentioned that a lot already. And really what it's saying is that you need a marketing strategy and you need a sales strategy. And we can help you with all of that. We have business advisors who are marketing experts. I've got a guy who spent like 25 years in a major corporation doing marketing, and he knows a lot about it. And now he's helping small businesses to get good at it. So that's the overview, the checklist for starting a business. And what I'm hoping you're doing in your mind, if not on paper, is kind of writing notes to yourself about, have I started a business plan? Have I thought about choosing the right kind of legal entity? Have I thought about protecting my products or services with patents and trademarks and copyrights? Do I know something about how I'm going to report and pay my taxes, et cetera, et cetera? The handbook in Illinois that you have goes into a greater amount of detail as well. So I'd encourage you to read that. And just start working your way through the checklist, right? That's why we call it a checklist. You make a list of things to do, you start working on 1 or 2 items and you get them done, and then you move on to the next ones. So I mentioned a couple of times now that we're going to talk about a business plan. And right off the bat, I'll tell you, if you look in the bottom left-hand corner of the slide here, it says page 34. So page 34 in the Starting Your Business in Illinois handbook has a pretty comprehensive outline for a business plan. There's not one right model for a business plan. Typically, a comprehensive business plan is going to include all of the headings that you see on the slide here. A summary that typically you do when the rest of the plan is already written, you go back and you create a summary. You're going to talk about what company or industry you're in. You're going to talk about what product or service you're selling and what the market is like, the people that you intend to sell to, what your strategy is for selling to them, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not going to read all these off to you. You can read them on your own. And the handbook goes into a great amount of detail. What I'll say is this, folks, and I think this is important. If you're just starting out, you probably don't need a 30-page business plan. 10 years ago, that was what everybody did. I did it, and people still do it. But mostly, I think if you're starting out, what you need is something simple. You don't need to go into 30 pages right away. If you're going to pursue commercial funding, then you need the 30-page business plan. Okay, your lender is going to want to know what your business plan is, because they want to know that you're going to be able to pay the money back. That's their motivation. So comprehensive business plan, good if you're pursuing commercial funding. If you're just getting started and you're not pursuing commercial funding, a simpler plan might be good for you. So now I want to point you to these 2 lines at the very bottom of the slide here. One says Business Model Canvas Video, and the other one says Business Model Canvas Tool. So, and I have no problem, Jamie, if we want to send the slide set out to everybody so that they can have these links. But if you go to this YouTube video that's on there, it's about 10 minutes, and it shows you how to use this tool called Business Model Canvas. And the second link on there is the tool itself. So it's just a PDF document of a 1-page business plan that, in my opinion, if you're a startup, it's a great place to start. It has you identifying what you're selling, who you want to sell it to, what kind of value you intend to add. So now remember we talked about thinking about customer needs and how you're going to differentiate yourself. This is in this business plan tool. That's where you start working all that out. It gives you the opportunity to talk about what you're going to charge, what kind of partners that you need, to provide that product or service, how you're going to deliver it, and other things as well. So for those of you who are just starting out, you should do some business planning, and a great place to start is with Business Model Canvas. So check that out. Check out the YouTube video. Check out the tool. Start it on your own. If you want to come to the SBDC and have some of our advisors talk through these tools with you, we can do that as well. So that's all I'm going to say at this point about business planning. You need one. It doesn't have to be 30 pages long, but mainly what you want is to not start your business until you have put pen to paper or fingers to keyboard, whatever you want to call it, and you've thought through this to the point where you can feel confident that you're going to be spending your own money wisely, and you're going to be using your time, your own time, in a way that's going to produce something of value. So it's about informed decisions. That's what it's about. It's about making sure that you've thought things through and you're as confident as you can be that this business is the right thing and that you're going to move forward. I can tell you that there have been many times when businesses that we work through do a business plan, and especially when they get to the financial information, which is the last bullet on this list, and they project out how much money it's going to cost them realistically to start the business, and they also project out how much money they're going to make. I've had more than a handful of situations where the right decision was to not start the business. And that's a win in my mind. That's a disaster averted. And I feel good about those things. And it might be disappointing to some degree for the business owner, but hey, you just averted a disaster. Better to learn that before you spent the money than after you've spent it. All right, so one other thing I want you to think about is this whole issue of marketing. I'm just going to back up. It's one of the issues on the business plan. It's bullet number, what is it, 5 there, your marketing strategy and your market analysis. And what I want you to do right now is, and we're not going to even talk about this as a group or anything, in your minds, I just want you asking and answering these questions. For the product or service that you intend to sell, who are your customers? Meaning, you have to define that in terms of like how much disposable income they have, where they're geographically located, if there's a geographic limitation to what you're selling, what their concerns are and what their interests are, where they hang out. Because when you get the answers to these questions, it helps you to start identifying your marketing strategy, right? If you're selling a product that appeals to health-conscious middle-aged women, then that's good information, because now you can start to ask yourself, where do health-conscious middle-aged women hang out, and how do they communicate, and how can I connect with them? So there's a whole range of issues that goes into a marketing strategy. And these questions that are on here are just some of the initial ones that I'd like you to start thinking about. Why do they need what you're selling? Don't assume that they do. Try and answer that. And sometimes the answer to that is by doing a little research, by talking with or surveying the target audience that you intend to serve and asking them, would you buy this? And what kinds of things what kinds of features would you like to see in my product or service that you would be willing to pay for? Taking a look at competitive businesses and seeing how they're doing to prove to you that there's a need for what you're selling. How will you promote your product or service? There are all kinds of approaches to connecting with your target audience. Nowadays, social media is a really big one. And there still are traditional marketing strategies, like putting together a brochure or a website or flyers, and those are all still good and fine, but there are a number of ways that you can promote your product or service. And to the extent that you can get other people involved in selling your product, like by making referrals and things like that, one of the best promotional tools for you is going to be an already satisfied customer, somebody who's willing to turn you on or connect you with other people that might need your product or service. And the last one here is, how will you get people to buy? And if it's a simple retail transaction, like, you're selling candles and they're, 15 bucks a piece, then that's the price tag that's on the candle, and that transaction's pretty straightforward. However, you have to have the right price point, right? You don't want to overprice it. You don't want to underprice it. If you are, if your business is some sort of, let's say, a consulting business where the price is negotiable and you actually have to put together a proposal and quote out a particular price and then negotiate on that price, that's something completely different. Now, my businesses, both of them required me to do that, which, requires some skill on your part to get people to the point where they're ready to tell you, yes, I'm going to pay you for this. So there's thought that has to go into that. So those are the things I'd like you to start thinking about and putting down on paper in some way in answer to those questions. And again, to some degree, the business model canvas, I think, will help you to do that. So one of the last things we're going to look at here, folks, is how you're going to fund this endeavor. So what you're seeing on the screen here is 5 categories of funding, and these are the major ones. It doesn't mean there aren't other ones, but these are the major ones, and they're really kind of in order of what startups tend to turn to. The biggest one, and I don't know the percent, but I'd venture to say that probably 90% of startups are going to be spending their own money. Your savings, any equity you might have in your home or other assets, retirement accounts, your own personal money, wherever that's going to come from. Second mortgage on your home. A lot of businesses do that. And this brings us back to why it's so important that you think through this, isn't it? That you have a business plan that's solid and that you've had other people look at and say, yeah, this seems pretty foolproof to me. I think you should go forward with it, because you are getting ready to spend your own money. I did it. Almost every small business person I work with now has done it. So most entrepreneurs absolutely do that. And there's nothing wrong with it as long as you're making informed decisions. Credit cards is another one. So you want to be careful with that, obviously, because you can get yourself into debt if you spend and you don't pay back those credit card, you don't pay it back every month. Now, for all 17 years I was in business, I was fortunate. I operated businesses that did not have a lot of overhead. I paid for everything on credit cards, and I paid zero interest for 17 years because I paid them off every month. I was fortunate enough to be able to do that. You have to think about whether or not you are. But credit cards are absolutely a source of funding when you're starting up. Friends and family is another one. You might have mom, dad, brother, sister, aunt, uncle, whatever, who believe in your business venture and are willing to front you some money. Sometimes they'll do it for interest. Sometimes they'll just do it as a gift, meaning that you'll have to pay back what they gave you, but without interest. And then other times they actually want equity in your company. So now we're talking about Shark Tank kinds of financing, where they say, yes, I'll give you $50,000, but I believe in your enterprise and I'd like 5% return on my investment. So any revenue you make, they get 5% of it. At least that's one way to look at it. There are others as well, but they want equity. So there's usually, generally speaking, there's gift capital, there's debt capital, and there's equity capital. Those are the 3 major categories. Gift capital being that there's no interest charge, debt capital being that there is interest charge, and then equity capital being that you're actually giving a percent of the business to the person who made the investment. So those are some things to think about there. And I know lots of folks who do rely upon friends and family to get things going, and it works fine. And if you're not careful, especially if you're lending to friends and family, if the business fails and you lose the money, then you've also impacted probably that relationship. So that's something to think about. Crowdfunding is the third source that has been around for a while now. And generally the way it works is that there are platforms out there, online platforms like Kickstarter and GoFundMe, and there are many, many more now that you can go to. And you can basically put together a profile of your business or whatever it is you want to raise money for. There's a lot of not-for-profits that raise money on crowdfunding campaigns like this. And those crowdfunding platforms tend to also fall into the three categories we talked about for friends and family: gift capital, debt capital, and equity capital. It says loan there, but that's really what I mean by that is debt capital. And here's what I'll say about that. I think that what you need if you're going to be successful at crowdfunding is you need a really good crowdfunding campaign. There's a lot of competition for those funds. You want to make sure people are compelled to invest in your idea. And so you either have to be good at putting that crowdfunding campaign together yourself, or there are actually organizations out there now who whose job it is to create your crowdfunding campaign for you, and they're good at it. Of course, they're going to either take a flat fee up front, or they're going to take a % of the proceeds of the funding that you get. But it might be worth the investment because, again, what matters is that you have a quality crowdfunding campaign. If you can't do it on your own, you might want to hire somebody to help you with that. It's been a while since I've dealt with that, so I couldn't even at this point tell you specific crowdfunding campaign creators, but I know they're out there because years ago I looked into it myself. So there's something else to think about. Number 4 is bank loans. I already said it's difficult to get a commercial loan as a startup. And the reason is because banks are, they're risk managers, and they're not going to take on a risk that is not good for them. So what they look at is, can you pay the loan back? And so as a startup, you don't have, most of the time, you don't have some of the requirements that a bank is going to need. Like, for example, as a startup, you cannot demonstrate a revenue generating history because you're brand new. You cannot, you might not have a great credit score. You might not have collateral or down payment that a bank is going to need in order to secure that loan. So it's not impossible, and I don't mean to dissuade you from looking at commercial loans, but it is challenging if you're a startup unless you can provide those some of the requirements that you see listed on the screen there. Doesn't mean you can't get a personal loan, right? As a personal loan, maybe you put up your house against the loan. You have the equity in your home, you put that up against the loan, or you have other assets that you can put up. And so it is completely possible to get a personal loan that you apply to your business. But that's up to you as to how much of your personal money and your personal equity you want to put into that. And then the last one is venture capital. And for the most part, unless it's a high-tech business startup, you know, you're creating the next life-saving healthcare related device, or you've come up with a revolutionary new way for farmers to grow plants, whatever. Unless it's a high-tech venture, for the most part, venture capitalists are not really very interested in it. So it can be tough to get money from venture capitalists, but they are out there. And in fact, there are a number of venture capital investment communities in the Midwest. And if you're interested, I can tell you about those. I've got, I don't know, 4 or 5 websites that I could send to you that talks about those investment communities. So there's an overview, folks, of the funding aspect. And again, what it comes down to is you first need to figure out how much money you need to start the business, and then you have to find out where that money is going to come from. And generally speaking, what we just talked about are your options. And so what I would urge you to do is figure that out. Make some financial projections. One of the things you'll see in the back of the Starting Your Business in Illinois handbook are some financial worksheets that help you to itemize in a fairly detailed fashion all the expenses that you'll have to start a business, how much it costs to incorporate and pay an accountant and get internet and buy your inventory and, have a delivery vehicle, all those things. And so what you need to do is estimate startup costs, what it's going to cost to start it, and then run it for at least a year. That's what you want to know. How much money is that going to take to start it and run it for a year? And then you need to make some realistic projections of how much revenue you're going to make. And I can tell you, again, from personal experience, that most businesses can expect not to make a profit for some number of years. Doesn't mean you can't pay the bills, but it might mean that you're not making enough money to plow money back into the business to grow it, or to put money into savings for yourself. That's just a reality for small business. Now, that's not across the board true. Certainly there are situations where a business is making a profit right away, but generally speaking, it does take a while to get your feet on the ground. And so you really want to do a good job of figuring out how much money you need and start to think through where you're going to get that money from, because you don't want to make foolish decisions when it comes to your own, when it comes to the money you're going to spend in this business. So the last thing I'll mention is something that I brought up before, which is you as a business owner need to, you're the decision maker. You are the one in charge of this business, and you have to know how to operate it and make it successful. And we spent the last hour and almost 15 minutes talking about all the ways that you can do that. You don't need to do it alone. Surround yourself with people who can help. Attorneys, accountants, insurance agents, bankers, your small business, Illinois Small Business Development Center, and others to help you out. Just don't get into the frame of mind of saying to yourself that you can handle it all, because for a lot of people, they find out that they can't. At least they can't and do it well. So get into the habit of creating your success team. Find out who those folks are and get them on board. Zig Ziglar is a guy that some of you may have heard of, and he's kind of a sales expert and motivational speaker. And he says, there's no elevator to success. You have to take the stairs. So there is work involved in this, but as I said in the beginning, it can be fulfilling and challenging in wonderful, wonderful ways. I'm excited to have spent a little bit of time with you talking about how you can begin this journey. And on the screen now, you see the website address and our email address and our phone number. And if you want to schedule an advising appointment, you can certainly do that. It's all virtual right now, obviously, but it doesn't diminish our help in any way. We can do everything virtually that we usually do in person. So we'll open it up for questions in just a moment here, but before we end, I want to thank everybody for your time and attention. I hope you got something good out of it, and I wish you well on your journey. So let's see here.
Thank you, Mitch. So it looks like your video is off. There we go. Now I see you. All right.
I'm back. So any questions in the chat box?
I don't see any questions in the chat box right now. Very informative. And yeah, so if you guys have anything that you'd like to add or any questions that you have, please put that in the chat. And we'll hang out for a couple minutes and just make sure we get everything answered.
Sounds good. Sounds good. And thank you, Jamie, for hosting this. Greatly appreciated.
Absolutely. Yes.
So, and while you folks are thinking about whether or not you have any questions, I'll just say that starting your own business is really, it's a journey. And when you sit down and you list all the things that you're required to do, it can be a little overwhelming. But what I would suggest is make that list. And if you're serious about moving forward with it, just take one thing a day. It could be one thing a week. Like this week, I'm gonna complete the business model canvas. I'm gonna do my business plan. And then next week, I am going to start making financial projections. I'm going to estimate how much money I think that it'll cost me to start and how much money I'll make. So just treat it like a checklist. Take one item at a time. I always used to say, how do you eat an elephant? You eat it one bite at a time. It's big and overwhelming when it's sitting in front of you, but if you break it down into its component parts and start working on it little by little, you'll make progress. Any questions coming up at all from anybody?
No, I think you were so informative that pretty much covered everything.
Okay. Well, hey folks, thanks so much for spending time with me. I hope to see you around at the Small Business Development Center. Jamie, any other closing comments from you?
Not at this point, no, just of course we have a lot of openings in our future programs, so look out for Facebook posts and emails and things like that, and feel free to sign up for upcoming events. So
awesome.
All right.
Thank
Otherwise,
you all.
We'll do a follow-up email on this. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. And then you did see, I'll include Mitch's email and that information as well.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.
All right. Everyone
Good
have a good
night.
night. Thanks.
Bye.